Start?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I am Carrie Tellefson, and I'm your lobbyist. And looking forward to getting to know all of you and working on this project together. So we can do this any number of ways. I saw that you had several bills that you looked at that you're interested in, but I wanted to see if you had general questions for me before we get started with choosing a bill for the class. Or if you want me to do, Eric, would you like me to do some general kind of overview stuff?
Yeah, we do have some, I think we do have some questions that the students generated, so we can start there if you'd like.
Sure.
So if you want to ask a question, come sit next to, right there so that Carrie can see you. Carrie, would you like us to call you Carrie or Ms. Tellefson, or do you?
Carrie's fine.
Okay. Okay, so I think Harnor wants to ask the first question.
Great.
So my question is, when you go to these caucuses or these hearings, like, do you pre-write or do you go in with bulletins, or do you come in with your questions and speeches on the spot, or do you have like a crew that works with you?
Yeah, good question. So you're asking for me, like me personally, how I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little background about me. I work for a law firm, and it's a really small firm, and then I represent several different clients. Most of them are business clients and healthcare, manufacturing, kind of a variety of sectors. And so the answer to that question depends on the client. So in general, if I'm going to go testify at a hearing, I'll make a one-sheet page that has some notes on it. But to develop that, I will end up, getting feedback from the clients, and they're the ones that are hiring me to provide feedback. And so, usually all of the background information comes from them. So, for example, one of my clients is an association of dentists, and so there's lots of them, and so they have quite an internal process for them to figure out what they think about a particular piece of legislation. So after they go through their process, they let the lobbyists know, and then we weigh in how they want us to weigh in. But usually it's just with a cheat sheet with some notes, and then if possible, I like to bring the experts with me, like a client or somebody who has actual knowledge of the subject matter, because what legislators really want to hear is how the legislation that they're passing impacts people in a real way. So, they can see me all the time. I can talk to them in the hallway and whatnot, but what they really care about is knowing how things really impact them. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So anybody else that would like to come ask a question about her job as a lobbyist? Carrie, I'm going to ask a favor. I have a noisy heater in my room, so if there's any way you could speak a little louder, that will help. But
sure, yeah, and it seems a little low to me too, David.
Their volume?
Yeah.
I can turn it up.
Okay.
Yeah. Students, if you want to come bring your chairs a little bit closer so you can hear, so especially those in the back, do that now. But do you want to ask the next question, Raphael? Okay. Here's about her job.
What is the salary of your job?
What's the salary?
Yeah.
It depends on how many clients I have. So I basically eat what I kill, So meaning I have to bring in clients every year, and I have some clients that are long term that I've been with for several years, and some clients that I'll just work with during sessions. So it totally varies, and it. Between lobbyists, it really varies also because, some lobbyists work for like one company and they only represent one, basically one subject matter. I'm actually what's called a contract lobbyist. So I have several different clients and I'm dealing with several different issues. Contract lobbyists tend to have the opportunity to make more, but you don't have the stability that you have with a regular employer. Like I have to buy my own health insurance and, pay my own taxes. I'm part of a small law firm, but there's only 5 of us. So, there's lots of different models, and it can be very lucrative, but it can also just be a real good, stable job. So something you should think about.
One more question.
Yeah.
Have you actually done any big changes throughout your career?
Have I done any what?
Like, what's the biggest impact you've done so far?
Like the biggest impact on a bill that you've had, I guess. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Let me think. I don't think I've been involved in anything that's super high profile. A lot of my clients are like health insurance companies, other insurance. Like I've got Regents Blue Shield, Progressive Insurance, USAA, the dentists, Ford Motor Company, you've probably heard of them. So, a lot of what I do is kind of mundane and not very, it's a lot of detail work. Before I worked in this capacity, I worked for the insurance commissioner. And in that capacity, we worked on some pretty good legislation having to do with the use of consumer credit scores for insurance rating, which was kind of a big deal to some people. But yeah, nothing really big that hit the papers all the time. And yet there are some some things that I work on that, you might find an editorial on it or something, in the news. But unless you're really reading the news all the time, you might not hear about it. So.
Thank you.
Carrie, how much time do you think we should devote to talking about the possible bills? I mean, should we take basically what I'm wondering is, should we take another question or two, or should we start talking about the bills?
I think we have time for another question or two. The bills that you sent, the one that was apparently your number one is no problem if you want to do that one. So I don't see a lot of challenge unless you wanted to go deep into the bills, but.
Okay, so let's have some more questions and then we'll get to the bills. Anybody else want to ask about her job as a lobbyist? Who are you pointing at? Armando, do you have a question you want to ask? Alexia, do you want to ask some of this? Yeah, Jose, come on up so you can be closer to the microphone.
Number one solution.
Hello.
Can you tell me a bit about your education? How long did it take you to become a lobbyist?
Sure. So I actually went to law school. So I went to college. I actually came out of college during a time when it was hard to get a job. So I worked a few different jobs that I didn't care for. I wasn't happy in those jobs. And so I decided to go to law school, and I went at night. I continued to work during the day, and then I went to night school. And I kind of fell into the lobbying. I ended up going into this, the governor's office has this program called the Executive Fellowship Program, and they also have internships for undergrads. But I did that program, which introduced me to the legislature and to how government works, and that's what kind of interested me in going into this type of work. So for me, it was law school, but you actually don't have to have, there are no requirements to be a lobbyist. You don't even have to have a high school degree. And it really varies the type of lobbyists that are in Olympia. I mean, all you have to do is register with the Public Disclosure Commission, file reports every month, and you can be a lobbyist. So basically, anybody who's going to talk to legislators more than 3 times needs to register. So there's a wide variety of skill sets in Olympia. I think a lot of people have maybe a kind of a public administration background or political science background, but it really is pretty diverse. So,
what kind of personal attributes do you think makes for the best or the most successful lobbyists? Have to be outgoing, for example, or like, what do you think?
So you kind of have to like people. It's I feel like it's actually more like sales than it is like law. Because a lot of what I do is try to sell my clients ideas and about a bill. So I'm trying to take something that's complicated and make it simple and explain it to a legislator who doesn't know anything about it, and convince them that, for example, if I need a change in a bill, convince them that it makes sense. So a lot of what I do is way more like sales than it would be like something you would do in a courtroom. So I think having the ability to read people is really important. To kind of build relationships, get to know people, but then kind of read them and adjust when you're in a conversation. So if you can tell somebody's not liking what you say, find a way to say it differently, you know. So it's kind of a lot of people skills, interpersonal skills, and then just being able to keep track of a lot of things, because the legislative session is relatively short compared to the whole year. So there's just a whole lot going on, and it's just a matter of staying organized. So being organized is kind of a good trait to have also.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
I think there's some other students who have some other questions, but while they're coming up to the microphone, that made me think of something when you said that the session is very short. Do you work when they're not in session, or what do you do when that's not going on?
I do. So most of my clients are year-round, although I have a few that are session only. And when they're not in session, I'm in many cases working on the implementation of legislation. So if a bill is passed, for example, that relates to you know, your health insurance, like one of the things that everybody's thinking about now is, will the Affordable Care Act be repealed, and what does that mean for people? And so will they do something at the state level to, you know, change some laws to try to make sure people have health coverage? So if they pass some laws, then what happens next is there are state agencies that need to write rules to implement the laws, to make sure that the executive branch of government, you know, is overseeing basically the regulation. And so I do a lot of regulatory work in the interim with the Insurance Commissioner's Office and Department of Financial Institutions and some other agencies. And then I end up working on campaigns. So not directly for campaigns, but on behalf of my clients, I go to a lot of fundraisers. I get around to try to get around and meet with all the legislators and all the candidates, or as many as I can, to get to know who's running for office, and to try to talk with them about issues that my clients care about. So it is definitely a full-time, all-year-round job, but it's a completely different job in the interim. I'm not in Olympia. I have an office in Tacoma, but I'm really kind of all over the place, just going out and seeing people.
Cool, thank you.
Hello, my name's Armando.
Armando.
I just had a question. How do you try and convince people to side with you on certain issues?
It depends on the person. So, you know, and that's the thing that is interesting about being a lobbyist, is everybody learns differently, right? So if I'm talking to one legislator who is really detail oriented, you know, my job is to kind of know the legislators. And so if I know that Representative so-and-so is really detail oriented, then I'm going to want to come prepared with lots of answers to the questions that she or he will have. Whereas I might have another legislator who really doesn't care about all the details. They don't want they don't want too much. They just want to know the bottom line. You know, they might just want to know, just tell me what it means for people who vote for me, people in my district. So my job is to really know as much as I can about every legislator, so that I can communicate differently with them based on in a way that will make most sense to them. And that's what can be challenging, especially like this year. There's a whole bunch of new legislators, so yeah. You know, it's just I've got to get to know all of them, and that'll make me more effective. So it really changes all the time. Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that, and good luck.
Thanks.
So just real quick, so do any of your clients, you said you work with health insurance companies and dentists and stuff, so do your clients ever offer you, you know, any discounts, I guess?
Yeah.
Health insurance or anything?
I wish they could. Yeah, you know, like that was one of the first things I asked my health insurance client when I got them as a client. I've been working for them since 2009, but unfortunately, they can't just put me on their rolls because I'm not an employee, and that would be against the law. I'm actually an independent contractor, so I don't get to do that. So I'm with many of the people who are going to be wondering what's going to happen to the individual market and the Affordable Care Act changing. But same with, I could probably get one of the dentists to cut me a deal, I would think, you know, but they have a little more freedom there. So.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question or two about lobbying. Maria? Yeah, come on up, Maria.
Hi, my name's Maria.
Maria.
So my question is, when and under difficult circumstances, how do you deal with a difficult person?
How do I deal with a difficult person? Ooh, that's a good one. It happens all the time, you know, like every year, there's always something. So, you know, the thing that I always keep in mind is, you know, the elected officials that we deal with, they come from all backgrounds, right? Like from all over the state, all backgrounds, all personalities. And so I believe that they're owed respect, regardless, you know, of whether or not they might be having a moment of difficulty. And so you know, if I encounter somebody that's difficult, I just try to take a deep breath and step back and think about what might be going on in their life, because the legislators here are under so much stress, especially this year, because they have to fund education, and it's been something that's been on their to-do list for several years, and the deadline is coming now. They're under a Supreme Court order to do it, and if they don't do it, who knows what will happen. I mean, they're already, you know, imposing sanctions. The Supreme Court is imposing sanctions in the legislature, but who knows what they would do next if they can't get it done. So I kind of always try to think about, you know, what stress that person might be under, so that I can take a deep breath and step back and maybe come and approach it in a different way, or maybe just, you know, take a day or two and go back and talk to them later, you know. So, and I think everybody up here, it's kind of like, it's kind of interesting, because in Olympia, it's kind of like high school in many ways, or college. You know, everybody is kind of stuck together in one place. On the one hand, it's really good because that's where you can see the people that you need to see to get things done. But on the other hand, sometimes it can get a little bit intense. So, yeah, it's just, you know, probably not a whole lot different from what you have to do, you know, when interacting with your friends and teachers and whatnot, family.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Other folks, things you want to know? Who else wants to ask a question?
Come on, kids.
Okay, we have Cesar coming over.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
My question was, have you ever worked with a bill you didn't agree with?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not yet. Not yet. But I always kind of, I try to pick my clients so that I don't get into that situation. So there are some clients that I have chosen not to take because I didn't really agree with what they would be advocating for. I don't have any tobacco clients, for example. I mean, there's some things that I just personally don't agree with, so I won't do. But so far with the clients that I haven't had to say, ooh, that's a hard one. You know, I can't do it. But it's something that lobbyists, I think, often worry about, you know.
Seems like it would be hard to give it your all if you didn't even agree with what the legislation would do, right? It seems like you might not try as hard.
Right. Yeah. And as a lawyer, so, you know, for me, I think because I'm a lawyer and I had to take the Bar Association, in law school, you learn a lot about ethics and conflicts of interest and whatnot. And so I always really want to make sure that I feel good about the clients that I've taken and that I can support what they're advocating, because I want them to be represented to the best, you know, of my abilities, and I want them to have the best representation. So but you know, you just never know what's going to come up. So yeah, that's a good question.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Initial questions? You have another one, Raphael? Go ahead.
What is one topic you're really passionate about?
One topic that what? Excited.
Really passionate about.
Passionate about? Personally or for my work?
Personally.
Personally. Oh gosh, do I want to say this on TV? Yeah, it's only on TVW. Yeah. Yeah, so, right, it's only on the internet, now we're only on TVW. Well, I better scrub it then. Yeah, so, I mean, personally, women's rights and women's issues are something that's always been really important to me. And that's something that I would spend my personal time doing and working on, and, you know, working on in my free time. And working with kids, and that's why I like to volunteer my time to work with you guys. You know, those are two things that are really important to me. When it comes to politics, like, I might have my own personal opinions, but I don't say them really, because I have to work with both parties. So so that's one area where if you choose to be a lobbyist and you're advocating, you know, on behalf of clients, you end up kind of having to put your own personal politics aside, and, you know, and not really, they can't be a factor in your representation. So while I might have a lot of personal opinions about politics, I don't really ever say them because it would impact my clients, you know. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So we have about 7 minutes, I think, before 2 o'clock. So you want to tell the students what you know about that bill and
Sure.
kind of the process moving forward, timeline, you know, estimated timeline, that kind of stuff. So we can.
So the bill that you guys are the most interested in is the student loan bill, right?
Yeah, I mean, we did a really quick straw poll of the ones that we had looked into, and yes, that the one about student loans got the most votes.
Okay. So House Bill 1057, and I haven't had a chance to read the whole bill yet because I ended up having quite a few meetings today. But the good thing is it's a bipartisan bill, so it's a House bill. And so I'll just back up and give you just a quick briefing. The House is controlled by Democrats by really a small margin, like, you know, 1 vote, 2 votes, 1 vote. I always forget. The Senate is controlled by Republicans, although what's interesting, and this is a whole nother conversation, is right now one of the Republicans went to join the Trump administration, and so it's technically a tie until they appoint someone. But this is a House bill that's, the prime sponsor is a Democrat, and the House is controlled by Democrats, so that's good. But it also has both Democrats and Republicans on it, which means it has a better shot at moving through the process. And so I think it's a good candidate for you to follow because it'll probably stay alive for a while. It had a hearing on January 17th. It has not moved out of committee yet, but that's not a problem because there's still plenty of time. But one thing you guys might want to do if you have time in class is you can go on to TVW and watch the hearing on the bill. And that would give you kind of a good idea. I haven't brought up the list of people who testified yet or watched it myself, but I'll do that now that you guys have chosen it. But yeah, if you might want to look at it and just see, you know, who testified, I'll do the same. And it would be interesting to know if any kids did testify. And so the next thing I think that the next question would be for me to you is, and Eric, I don't know how much time you have to put into this, but you know, if you guys have time, you could go through the bill and just think about the things like from a practical perspective, what this bill would mean to you and why it would be important for example, if you're in college to get information about student loans and how they're impacting you. And just think about a couple things that you might say, like arguments that you might make, why it makes sense to have this become law. And because that's the kind of thing that would be most influential to legislators, you know, if they hear from students, you know, who expect to be taking out student loans, that this particular provision will end up providing you more information that will be helpful to you. That's good information to communicate. So that
we could probably do that. What kind of timeline?
Well, we have time because it was already heard. So honestly, so then the next step is bills are in committee and then they have a hearing. And then the next step for it to be voted out of committee. But when they vote it out of committee, there's no opportunity for more testimony, so that it'll just be voted out. I can do some checking to see, part of that will come up through watching the testimony, but just to see if there's any issues that need to be resolved in the bill or whether it looks like it's going to go smoothly. The cutoff date for bills to get out of committee in the House of Origin, where they were introduced, is February, I think it's the 17th. Let me see, look at my calendar. It's February 17th. So we have quite a bit of time before there's going to be any movement on it.
Okay.
And then what would happen is the bill would go to the floor, and then it would be up for a vote by the entire floor. And we can talk about that more in the next hookup. But so there's plenty of time. But what you might want to think about is coming up with just a few bullet points on why you think it's a good bill. And then what we could put together is like what I call it a one-pager, where we have the heading of the bill at the top, and I could help you format and whatnot if you just give me your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's something that I can use to try to lobby the bill for you. So I can give it to legislators and say, you know, I'm here on behalf of the Highline AP Government class, and you know, they really support this bill, and here are their reasons. And that could be influential with legislators as they try to decide what they want to do with this legislation.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think we can do that.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So we'll all do a little bit of homework, and
Yeah, do you remember the next time we'll chat?
I think it's 2 weeks. So let me look. Let's see. Next week. Yeah, the 9th.
Okay.
So, yeah, so two weeks.
Okay.
But that'll be plenty of time. Then the time after that, it's it's not for a while. March 9th.
Okay.
Okay, and so David is saying we could add one if we wanted to, depending on your schedule.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, you know, this is a longer session. It doesn't end till the end of April. So, you know, if we could just get together a little one pager, that will serve us well in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet all you guys and gals.
Thank you.
In a couple weeks. Okay.
Your time, we appreciate it.